You see?
I don't know. Bunch of pottery.
Look at that one.
It's candy cane.
Yes. There's nothing new in human experience, Mr. Tully. Each generation thinks it invented debauchery or suffering or rebellion, but man's every impulse and appetite, from the disgusting to the sublime, is on display right here, all around you. So, before you dismiss something as boring or irrelevant, remember, if you truly want to understand the present or yourself, you must begin in the past. You see, history is not simply the study of the past, it is an explanation of the present.
See, when you say it that way, and throw in some porn...
Okay. So that clip is from The Holdovers, a movie that I'll explain in a little bit. My name is Gavin McClure. I am an acupuncturist and Chinese medicine practitioner here in Missoula. I practice out of the Good Medicine Clinic over on Pine and Woody. I went to undergrad here at U of M, toured with the Montana Rep. What else? I'm originally from Gardner, Montana. I got my, in addition to being a licensed acupuncturist, I got my Master's of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine through the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine in Portland. That being said, I do not claim to be an expert. I've been studying Chinese medicine for about 12 years now, and that is a very short period of time. So I have a great interest in Chinese medicine. I have a great interest in Chinese medicine, the culture with which it arose out of, and the history of that culture. I don't claim to be an expert in Chinese history. This is stuff that I've cobbled in through my own curiosity. So that being said, this is a series of Chinese medicine. So this is the first class of the series. We'll be going over history during this class because it's nice to have a historical basis, because there's a lot in Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine seems very mysterious to us, and that's partly because it is such a drastically different cosmology than we are used to here in the West. And so we're going to be going over that cosmology, that history, to sort of explain where we are now and how we got here with Chinese medicine. The second class will dive into theories. So theories like yin-yang theory, five-element theory, Jing Qi Shen, 6 stages, meridian therapy, these theories that sort of support the practice of Chinese medicine. And then the third class, we will get into the practice of Chinese medicine. We'll be going over the 5 pillars of Chinese medicine, which are acupuncture and moxibustion, herbs and nutrition, movement, massage, body work, and feng shui. So we'll be going over those as well as giving you guys some demonstrations on the practice of Chinese medicine. That class will be held at Good Medicine, and that will be on May 29th. It's a Tuesday evening from 6 to 7:30. And that one, we will be charging $20 for that one for the supplies. And then also, if you register for that one and you come to that one, you might get a little special gift from Good Medicine as well. So to say thank you for coming to this series. Let's see. So that being said, I'd like to thank Good Medicine for sponsoring this series. It's a great clinic if you haven't been there. It's over on Pine and Woody, across from the transit center there downtown. I'd also like to thank MCAT for videoing this lecture series. It will be available on MCAT's YouTube channel And then also I'm going to get a copy of it, and it'll be available online as well. So if you want to look at this again, or if you want to pass it along to a friend, then it'll be available online. And I'd like to also thank my lovely wife for all of her support. And, yeah. All right, so there's 3 points that I'd like to make before we get started. So the first is the acknowledgement that we are on the ancestral land of the Salish Kootenai tribe. So this sort of seems to be a ubiquitous beginning to lectures and things here recently, and it's always kind of irked me when I've heard this introduction, partly because it seems a bit disingenuous. We are living on the ancestral land of the Salish Kootenai tribes, and it's sort of like, thanks for the land, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. But I was attending a movie at the Roxy Theater, and their introduction I really liked because it said that we're on the ancestral land of the Salish Kootenai, where the Salish Kootenai continues to speak the language. So language is very important. Language informs how we think. Language informs the place that we are. So words and language tie us to a place. One thing that we've done in sort of the American, European colonialism is we go to a place and then we change the names. So names that originally had meaning and originally were connected with the animate landscape have been separated. So I'm not saying that we should all learn Salish, but just recognize that there are languages that are connected with the land and speak with the land. That is particularly important in this day and age because we don't have a language that communicates with the land. We are fairly separate from the landscape. And that's one of the things that we're going to go through in this lecture and in the origins of Chinese medicine. The Chinese, they didn't make that distinction and make that separation in forming their medicine and their culture. So just take that into account. Let's see. Get through here, this. Number 2, not everything requires belief. So we tend to place a lot of emphasis on belief. Belief informs a lot of how we interact with the world. But not everything requires belief. There are certain beliefs that are ingrained in our culture that we've grown up with that are instilled in our sense of self, our sense of interaction with each other. And sometimes these can be good and sometimes they can be problematic. Sometimes we can try and cram our beliefs into justifying situations, and honestly, it's kind of exhausting and it can expend a lot of energy. So adopting a perspective of openness can help to incorporate a broader perspective. So I like Ted Lasso's quote, which he said, "Be curious, not judgmental." And so belief is not important, and some things just are. So the sun rises in the west and sets in the east. The spring goes into summer, goes into winter. What? Oh, it rises in the east, sets in the west. Ah. Thanks. Yeah, spring goes into summer, fall, winter. The tides rise and fall. The North Star points north. So these are the things that are that we don't need belief for. They are fact, okay? And we live in an age where there's a lot of information, too much information, but there's a lot of information that we've lost. How many people know which way the Big Dipper rotates? Higgins in sixth. The Big Dipper. So the Big Dipper rotates around the North Star, okay? And it rotates, is it clockwise or is it counterclockwise? Okay. This isn't astronomy, this is human experience. Like, we've lost, this kind of goes to show the disconnect that we have with the Earth. Like, how many people have looked up and seen the Big Dipper, but we don't know which way it's moving in the night sky. So let's just take that into note. There's a lot that we know, but there's a lot that we don't know and that we've forgotten. And part of that is some of the connection with the Earth. So let's see. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I know. Clockwise? Okay, we got a clockwise. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, those are both very good answers. It's counterclockwise. Yeah. Okay. Number 3, there are no silver bullets and there is no fountain of youth. So, if you're thinking that Chinese medicine is going to give you immortality or make you live forever, that's not the case. And I don't claim that Chinese medicine is the answer to everything. It cannot cure everything. And it's not superior to all other forms of medicine at all times. Chinese medicine is a perspective and a tool, and having a perspective and a tool, and having this perspective as a component to your overall broad and diverse toolkit allows for a more precise relationship with your body and its environment. Okay? As the teacher Liu Ming says, try many things and honor your own experience. Okay. And I don't mean, and so during this talk, I'm going to make some comparisons with Western medicine. I don't mean to demonize any particular perspective. It's just to sort of compare and contrast different lines of thought. So that brings us to this movie clip. So this clip is from The Holdovers. It's a great movie if you are not familiar with it. The quote was, that I wanted to repeat, was, "History is not simply the study of the past, it is an explanation of the present." There are thousands of histories in human culture, and we kind of learn one of them, basically. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get a perspective on another history. It's a very long history. Oh, I'm connected here, and I am going to become disconnected. It is a very long history, and it is drastically undertaught in this culture, and for good reason, because it is such a different cosmology and it's such a different formation to the history that we have studied in the West. And in order to do so, you kind of have to start at the beginning, which is what we're going to do. So how many people believe in ghosts? Ghosts. Okay, we got maybe a little under half. Okay. Well, belief is not necessary, guys. You guys aren't listening. So, no, but that's a good point. So, if you went to any culture in the world and you said, "I saw a ghost," would that culture know kind of what you were communicating? So we can assume that ghosts are, or the phenomena of ghosts is a human experience. Is that safe to say? Okay. So that human experience came because we once viewed the land as, or the world as animate. And it's a pretty new development that we actually don't believe in ghosts. Okay? So to believe in a ghost is one thing. To not believe in a ghost, that's also a belief. So some things don't require that dualism and that dichotomy of belief and not belief. Okay? So, well, let's get on into animism. Animism is the view that the landscape is animate. That is one definition. So that means that trees are alive, not only in the sense that they are alive, but they have a spirit. They have an essence that goes beyond the physical component of it. This can also be viewed as pattern. So a rose grows with thorns. So that's a pattern that it has. It has a personality. How many of you have names for your cars? Okay. Yeah, there you go. And does your car have a personality? Yeah, there you go. Oh, I wanted to say one other thing about the ghosts. How many of you believe that cats can see ghosts? Okay. Okay. So there's a level of perspective there. So not only is in animism, not only is the landscape animate, but reality itself is animate. So the space between things is animate. The foundation from which reality arises is animate. We'll get into this a little bit later when we talk about Taoism. Reality is populated with gods and spirits and patterns of the animate landscape. And how do you interact with this landscape? It's through shamanism. Shamanism is a way to communicate with those spirits of the landscape. Shamans were often people who had gone through trials themselves, been healed themselves from great sickness, and therefore had a connection with these spirits that they could communicate with. It's also, animism also, there is a veneration of the ancestors. So, if you were a fisherman and you were trying to fish for salmon, and the salmon have disappeared. So, but your grandfather, who died 10 years ago, was an amazing fisherman. And it was like fish would just jump out of the water into his nets. So you can't just speak directly to the gods and spirits. What you would do is you would communicate with your grandfather. Since you had a relationship with your grandfather, you would communicate with your grandfather and ask him to communicate with the spirit of the salmon on your behalf. So the ancestors are mediaries between the human and these larger spirits, gods, and patterns of nature. So that is sort of the long and short of animism. So now we'll get into China. Okay. So, and one more thing about animism. That was the belief and sort of the way of viewing the world from 100, 200,000 years ago until probably about 2,000 years ago. So the vast, vast majority of human history, that was the viewpoint, and that was the knowledge base of humans, was an interaction with the landscape in that capacity. So now let's get into the landscape itself. So this is China. So a couple of key geographical features that we'll go over that will help us as we travel this history of China. So China, it's relatively insulated from invading forces. So you can see here, this is the plateau of Tibet. Here you have the Tarim Basin, the Gobi Desert. So you have deserts here, huge mountains here. Over here, huge forests, deep valleys. It's pretty impenetrable getting through this area. The only area that is pretty open to invasion is this area, right through here. We have two major rivers, the Yellow River here in the north, the Yangtze River here in the south. Several times throughout China's history, there's been a division of dynasties, a division of it's oftentimes a north and a south dynasty. That's often, the Yangtze is often the dividing line of those dynasties and those governments. So a little bit about the rivers. The river, this is the Yellow River. This is where Chinese culture arose from, particularly this area right here. The confluence of the Yellow River, the Wei, the Jingluo. This is where Chinese civilization arose from. The thing about the Yellow River, I'm sure you've all heard about the floods of the Yellow River. The Yellow River starts in the Tibetan Plateau here. And so one of the things that happens is the flooding every year could cause grave devastation. And this is how bad the floods would get. So see how the river comes this way? So this is the Shandong Peninsula right here. This whole area is floodplain. So every once in a while, you get a big flood, and the river changes course. It doesn't go this way, it goes this way. Clear on the other side of this peninsula. This is 200 to 300 miles that it changes course. So if your farm is over here, then all of a sudden the Yellow River changes direction and comes this way, then you're kind of SOL. So flooding was a big, and controlling the flooding was a big concern for the early Chinese. And then also with this floods, it also brings sediment and silt from the Loess Plains here. So these are some high plains that have very fine yellow silty soil. That's where the Yellow River gets its name. So these drainages would come, the runoff would come off of these drainages here, deposit all of this fertile soil here. And so it was a very agrarian culture. They could grow things very easily. Millet was one of the first grains to be grown there, and then later on rice and other things were cultivated there as well. Okay, moving through. Okay, so we're going to traverse the history of China through the ubiquitous dynasties of China. This is, you don't have to know any of these, the dates, it's just sort of a guideline here. So the first dynasty is the Xia dynasty, 270 to 1600 BC. This is the time of legendary rulers. Huangdi, which is sort of the legendary first ruler of China. It sort of established the Han dynasty, established sort of the cultural is sort of the cultural forebearer of the Chinese culture. You have Shennong, who is the divine farmer. He's the one who gave the Chinese people farming, animal husbandry, and he's one of the other mythic leaders of China. Then you have Yu the Great, he's kind of quasi-mythical. He is the one who figured out how to tame the floods. And he used it through through series of diversions and basically Yu the Great, he was the one who controlled the floods in China. So we have the Shang dynasty here, 1600 to 1046. I always thought that it's kind of interesting. That's a pretty accurate date for this far back, 1046. We'll get into that. The Shang dynasty is the height of the Bronze Age. They did pretty incredible bronze work. And then they also did turtle shell graffiti here. So these are dragon bones. This is a method of divination and also the earliest form of writing in China. So what people would do is they would scratch these questions into the plastrum of a tortoiseshell or the scapula of an ox. Then they would stick a hot poker on it, and depending on where it cracked, they would get their answer of the question that they asked. So in addition to being early writing, this is basically where the Chinese characters came from as an evolution from these images. The reason we're able to get this 1046 date is the stems and branches. So these stems and branches is a way to tell time using cycles of 10 and cycles of 12. So we all know, we're all quasi-familiar with the Chinese zodiac and the Chinese calendrical, well, the Chinese zodiac. So this year is the year of the snake. So there's 12 animals. So that's the branches component of the stems and branches, okay? The stems component is the 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, and yin-yang. So you got 10, okay? So this year is a snake year. It's also a yin-wood snake year. So you have the yin wood, which is the stem, and the snake, which is the branch. So that combination only happens every 60 or so years. So on here, they would say it was a yin wood snake year, and then they break it down to days as well. It's very complicated. I'm trying to learn it myself, and it's really... But anyways, long and short of it is it's a way to tell time, and it's a very accurate way to tell time, and that's why we can get accurate dates like 1046. Okay, so the Zhou dynasty. The Zhou dynasty is after the Shang fell through debauchery, the Zhou came into being. So a couple of points to make for the Zhou dynasty. This is the Duke of Zhou. He's sort of the he was a uncle of the king. So the brother of the king. The king had a son who was very young, and the Duke of Zhou took over as regent. When the son became of age, the Duke of Zhou abdicated and said, "No, this is my nephew should lead." So it was this very altruistic and very altruistic action that he made, and so he's revered as sort of the leader that people should emulate. So, and then you have the Mandate of Heaven. This also came around this time. The Mandate of Heaven is using nature and sort of the auspices of nature to determine how people are interacting, and mostly the political situation. So some things that change the Mandate of Heaven, if you have famines, if you have a lot of floods. So if you're a leader and there's a lot of natural disasters, then that is an indication that the Mandate of Heaven is changing and that you should change leadership. Maybe I wouldn't be too running to get into power when when we've got other climate things coming down the pipe. So, yeah, maybe. Okay, so also during the Zhou dynasty is the 5 classics. So these are 5 classical texts in Chinese medicine, or in Chinese culture. These are sort of the books that Confucius revered, and so Confucian education, you would have to learn all of these books. So Spring and Autumn Annals is a sort of it's kind of an account of a particular province called Lu province. The Book of Documents, I'm not too familiar with that one, honestly. The Book of Rites, Confucius pulled a lot from this one, and he's claimed to have written it. The Shizhi is the Book of Poetry or the Book of Songs. And then the I Ching is the Book of Change. So we're going to focus on this one a little bit more because I'm sure you guys have all heard of the I Ching. The I Ching is it's also called, or the Zhou, the Zhou Book of Change. So this is a classic of change, and this is, let me see. So I'm going to read a quick little excerpt here. So, early Chinese thinkers, unlike their Western counterparts, ancient and contemporary, were not concerned with seeking the essence of things, that which remained constant throughout the changes manifest in our senses. On the contrary, they seem to have presupposed that the only constant is change itself, as the Book of Change makes explicit. The reality and appearance dualism that is so close to the heart of Western philosophizing is closely linked to the permanence/change and form/matter distinctions. And consequently, we should not be surprised to find that no discussions of the underlying reality versus the changing appearance in Chinese text. Reality and appearance are one and the same, and the reality is that everything changes in nature, in society, and at the personal level. So, early on, they determined that all things change. Nothing abides. Nothing is permanent. So they studied it. How does this happen? How does one thing change into another? So they used a system using these hexagrams, which are a combination of trigrams. So this particular one, you have fire over yang. This is prosperity. That's the trigram for prosperity. And then through those interactions, any particular hexagram can change into any other hexagram. So the I Ching is not a book that you just sit and you start at the beginning and read. I tried to do that in college and it didn't go very far. It's something that you interact with. So you cast coins, you use yarrow stalks. It's a divinatory method that sort of elucidates how change occurs. And it's used it for divination, but it's also an education in the process of change. So, okay. So then we get on to the warring states. So after the Zhou dynasty fell, then you've got all of these states here who are all battling each other. Oh, and see, well, yeah, they're all battling each other here. And each individual state, so during this time period, you had masters who would go to different states and try and become sponsored by that state as one of their advisors or one of their literati, basically. So during this time, you have the time of Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War. You have Confucius, came out during this time. And then you have Lao Tzu, who we're not sure if he's actually a person or not, but Chuang-Tzu, who is definitely a person. And then you have the formation of the Tao Te Ching. So with Confucius, Chinese society is based around Confucius, Confucianism. These are some of the key tenets of Confucianism. The filial piety is veneration of the ancestors. That goes back to the animistic viewpoint. Ritual and propriety, that is a way of rectifying situations and imbalances. You also have these 5 relationships: ruler, subject, parent, child, husband, wife, siblings, and friends. So these are the basic ways that people interact with other people. So they broke it down, and each of these had a specific way that you should act towards the other. So, all right. So let's go a little bit into Taoism. So Lao Tzu, a semi-mythic figure, wrote the book, The Tao Te Ching. The Taoism is a naturalist philosophy, and it centers around the way. It can be translated as way, path, or principle. So I'm going to read you another little excerpt here, because I found that this is sort of the best explanation of Taoism that I've heard. So let's see. The Tao originally meant way, as in pathway or roadway, a meaning which it has kept. But Lao Tzu and Chuang-Tzu redefined it as a spiritual concept by using it to describe the process, hence a way, through which all things arise and pass away. We might approach their way by speaking of at its deep ontological level as a distinction between being and non-being, as where the distinction between being and non-being arises. Being can be understood fairly straightforwardly as the empirical universe, the 10,000 living and non-living things in constant transformation. And the non-being as the generative void from which this ever-changing realm of being perpetually arises. So this goes into the concept of animism, where the space between is alive as well. So you have the animate and the empirical universe, but then you have the generative space with which that reality arises. Let's see. Within this framework, way can be understood as a kind of generative ontological process through which all things arise and pass away, as non-being burgeons forth into the great transformation of being. This is simply an ontological description of natural processes, and it is perhaps most immediate manifest in the seasonal cycle, the emptiness of non-being in winter, beings burgeoning forth in the spring, the fullness and flourishing in the summer, and the dying back into non-being in the autumn. Okay? So that is sort of the essence of Taoism. So we have these, you've all seen this before. This is the yin-yang. This is the Taiji symbol, the supreme ultimate. So this is also a distillation of common experience of reality. So when China took over these areas, there was a lot of disparate groups, a lot of disparate bands with a lot of individual cultures. But one of the things that they found that they all had in common was there was a sky god, usually a father figure. You had an earth god, which was usually a mother figure. And so what they did was they incorporated this into yin and yang. So instead of naming those sky god, earth god, they said yin and yang. The sky god is yang. It's masculine. It's the sun. The moon, the yin would be the moon. It would be the earth. So separating these into those categories was a way that they could communicate with multiple cultures and incorporate multiple cultures into their realm of sphere, or realm of influence. So the first line of the Tao Te Ching is a way that is called the way is not the perennial way. A name that names isn't the perennial name. So these are three different translations of the same line. This is Dao, Go, Dao, Fei Chong, Dao. So basically what this says is whenever you try and pin it down and say, well, the sky god's name is Ra, you've lost it. Because to have a text where the very beginning line says that you cannot pin it down, it opens it to interpretation and it opens it into experience. So this is a very, I just think that it's so amazing that in the beginning of one of the most translated texts in the world, it basically says that you can't define this. So that's just an interesting side note. So after the warring states, all the tumult of the warring states, one state came up victorious, and that is the Qin dynasty, based out of Xiangnan. This guy, this egomaniac sociopath, Xu Huangdi, he became victorious. You know him from his clay friends that he had made for him. He is also known for his harsh legalist rule, basically pretty authoritarian rule. Also, his big parties, this party was called the burning of books and the burying of scholars. So he pretty much burned any other philosophies or contrary modes of thought other than what he thought, other than what he decided, except for medicine. He did keep a lot of the medicine stuff intact, partly because he was obsessed with immortality. And that's probably one reason why he died, was because he drank too much mercury. He also kickstarted the Chinese tourism industry by building the Big Wall. Started the Great Wall of China. So I'm going to go back here. So remember this line. Remember this undefended line right here? Guess where the Great Wall is? Right there. So that was a way to protect that area from invasion. Now I'm going to go all the way back. Here we go. Okay. And then also one thing he did was he standardized weights, measures, currency, and writing. So that was kind of a good thing, I guess, that happened. So a little bit into Chinese writing. Chinese writing is pictographic. So this is the character for wood, mu. This is the evolution from the dragon bones, those scratches on the dragon bones. This is sort of the evolution of that character. Then it was standardized in the Qin dynasty into this character. And the characters have been relatively standardized since then. It doesn't mean that you can actually pick up a text from 200 BC and read it. Their meanings have changed and stuff. But the characters were standardized around this time period. And the cool thing about a pictographic language is it is applicable to diverse languages. So if this is mu in Chinese, you can also write mu, or you can also write wood. So if it's not phonetic, then multiple cultures and multiple languages can use this writing system. And in fact, they did. A lot of the Xiongnu, you know how they built the wall? People who lived on the other side of the wall adopted this writing system and started using Chinese culture. The saying in Chinese culture is the invaders eventually become Chinese because of Chinese culture and the systems that they have created. They invade, and then they're like, well, this culture works really well, so we're gonna adopt a lot of this. Okay. So, and it's been relatively unchanged. Okay, the Han Dynasty. So this is sort of where Chinese culture really starts taking its stride. So this is ethnically Chinese. If you ask most Chinese folks what culture they are, they would say Han. They are Han Chinese. So during this time period, you get the earliest medical texts. There was an excavation in, I believe, the 60s or the 70s of some tombs at this place, Ma Huangdi, where they unearthed a massive trove of Chinese medicine texts, I Ching, the Huangdi Neijing, some old text. So this is a little bit of a side note. So we're going to divert a little bit. So pretty much up until this point, Western and Eastern medicine are pretty much similar. So you have a rudimentary system of like humors. You have a humor system, like an elements system. And then you primarily, one of the main methods of treatment is bleeding. So what happened during the Han Dynasty was a bit of a diversion. So instead of just like bleeding people, like you have an illness or a sickness, you bleed them. If you bleed them, if they get better, then that's great. If they don't, they die, and that's unfortunate. In the Han Dynasty, they recognized that some people might need supplementation. So some people might be more sensitive. Some people might be deficient in their constitution. So they implemented the idea of supplementation. So adding to a person as opposed to just trying to bleed away any demons or evil that exist in the body. The Romans kept sort of that idea. They did not sort of come up with supplementation. In fact, they codified in the Roman Charter that if a person died from medical treatment, then they were not Roman citizens. So that's one way. That's a different way to look at things. So with supplementation, they found that people whose constitutions were not robust still had something to offer to the nation and to culture. So these are three major texts of the Han Dynasty: the Huangdi Neijing, which is basically a cosmology explained through the practice of medicine. So it goes into the seasons, it goes into the 5 elements, it goes into sort of how humans interact with nature, how the seasons interact on the human body. The Nanjing is the classic of difficulties, so there was a few questions that people had from the Neijing, and they rectified it in this classic of difficulties. This is one of the main texts used for acupuncture today. Then you have the Shenan Bencao Jing. Remember Shenong, the divine farmer who taught everybody how to grow plants. This is the first Materia Medica. So this is the first codification of a herbal system. So during this time period, we also have the first texts on acupuncture and moxibustion. So there's evidence that says that moxibustion, how many of you are familiar with moxibustion? Okay, not very many. So moxibustion is mugwort. It is artemisia. It is an herb that is burned on specific points of the body. And so it goes into that supplementation aspect of Chinese medicine. So whereas with needles, Usually those were, they used very thick needles, and sometimes they were used oftentimes for bleeding. The moxibustion adds a heat into the body, and so it stimulates those points with heat as opposed to a needle. And so you get a bit more of that supplementation aspect of the medicine. So the original acupuncture needles were stone or bone, and these were stimulated on various points of the body based on the meridian system. So this is the meridian system. I'm sure you've all seen pictures or somewhat familiar with these. So this meridian system was developed with the language and with the idea of water. So remember how Yu the Great, he tamed the floods. He tamed it through various diversion channels and various methods to get that water or that qi to flow in different directions. So they took that sort of essence of diverting and controlling flows into this system. So you have different points that direct qi into different channels. So you have this meridian system, these lines on the body where different qi flow. You have 12 channels, 6 in the arms, 6 in the legs, and then you have 2 other extraordinary vessels, which we won't get into right now, or you have 8 other ones. It gets pretty complicated once you kind of get into it. So and then these meridian systems have specific points, specific areas where the qi is readily available, where it is close to the surface, where that qi can be manipulated as it goes through these channels. And the names of these are sort of names of the landscape. So similar to how, what I said all the way at the beginning, how names and language is important. The names of these points give an idea of what they do. So these ones on the back of the neck, Feng Chi. How many of you know what Feng Chi is? The wind pool. Okay. So the wind pool is a place where wind can enter the body. So the names of these points give an indication of their action and what they do on the body. Okay, so also during the Han Dynasty, this guy, Zhang Zhongjing, he wrote this book, The Shang Han Lun, which is the discussion, translated as the discussion of cold damage. This is an herbal classic. It is still in use today. It is broken down into 6 chapters describing symptomology and the herbs and the formulas that treat that symptomology, as well as modifications of those formulas. So this book is still in use today. There's a specific type of herbalism called Jingfeng herbalism that uses classical formulas, and they primarily pull from this work here. All right. So that brings us, so the Han Dynasty ended at 221. We're going to skip ahead to the Tang Dynasty. So during the Tang Dynasty, there was some influences from Buddhism. Buddhism sort of came to flourish during the Tang Dynasty. Wait a second, did I? Oh, sorry, I didn't get into this one. So, also during the Han Dynasty is Huatou, one of the sort of deities of Chinese medicine. This was an actual person. He was an acupuncturist. He was an herbalist. He also developed the Daoyin, the 5 animal frolics, early forms of Qigong, basically. So right about here, I wanted to sort of take a step away from and sort of explain what sort of medicine looked like in China during that time. So you would have a Chinese doctor, and if they were an acupuncturist, they were probably itinerant. They would move around. So an acupuncturist didn't only have knowledge of the meridian system, but they also had knowledge of stems and branches, the time system that we went over, and feng shui. So they would know which points were open at different times of the day. So you have this meridian system, and qi flows through that meridian system, but it flows through it at different times. So in the middle of the night, your qi sinks. It goes out of your head and it sinks. During the daytime, your sense organs are in full mode, and so your qi rises. In the springtime, qi rises. You can probably feel it. We get a lot of shoulder issues here in the springtime. We also get a lot of some Bell's palsy type sensations where qi is rising up to the head, and it's sort of that chaotic action happens in the springtime. So they use stems and branches in feng shui to determine where qi is flowing and how to manipulate it. So you would have these itinerant practitioners who would go from town to town, and based on sort of the calendar and the location being like, oh well, it'll be good to do acupuncture in Frenchtown next week, because the feng shui of Frenchtown, these certain points will be open, and so we'll go do acupuncture in Frenchtown, and then the week after that it's going to be up in Polson. So they would move around based on the feng shui. And also there was a very different view of medicine. It wasn't salvational in a way. So you would have these people who were sort of legendary practitioners, but it's almost like the medicine was an afterthought and healing people was an afterthought. So these are people who would go and be up in the caves in the mountains working on cultivating their own essence, their own self. And then they would come down into the villages when they were like, I got a question about this. So they'd come down, they'd work on some people, they'd figure out what they wanted to know, and then they'd go back up into the mountains. And the people that they didn't heal, then oftentimes the people that they did heal would become practitioners themselves, and they would heal the people that were still in line, basically. All right, so it was a bit of a different mentality towards healing. All right, so we got the Tang Dynasty where we have Buddhist influence. We also have some Arabic medicine that came in through the Silk Road here. So the Silk Road kind of comes through this way. Some things that came in from Arabic medicine, cauterization, some specific herbal herbs that came in through that pathway, and some categorization systems. All right. So the Song Dynasty, this is the height of Chinese medicine. So we have these 4 great masters here. They all had formed individual schools: the attacking and evacuating school, cold and cooling school, earth school, and the yin nourishing school. So the Song Dynasty is often seen as the height of Chinese culture in general, and it is reflected in the advancements that they made in Chinese medicine at this time. So just a little diversion. We'll just take a look and see what the West was doing at this time. We had plagues and we were burning a lot of people. So this is something to take into account, because we spent about 1,000 years eradicating our herbal knowledge. Okay? So who know any herbs were primarily the purview of women. The kitchen and the home was also the medicinary. And so if you had women who were healers, they were often seen as witches, and that knowledge burned up pretty fast. And it was a pretty constant persecution for about 1,000 years. Yes?
Were the West and the East communicating at that time? Is there ways that they...
Not too much. It was only, I mean, pretty soon after this, then Marco Polo went to the Yuan dynasty. So they're pretty separated at this point. There's some, like I said, there's some communication with the Arab states, but with Europe and the West, not too much. Not too much communication until Yuan dynasty. So the Yuan dynasty was a Mongol dynasty. So after you had the height of the Song dynasty, the Mongols came in from the north, overran the wall, and took over China. They created the Yuan dynasty. That was Marco Polo. So basically, the Mongols in the 1200s, they conquered all the way to the edges of Europe. So they conquered a vast swath of the world, and Europe didn't really know who these people were. So after the Mongols receded, they were like, we need to find out who these people are. So they sent emissaries to the Yuan dynasty, like Marco Polo. He went and he lived in he lived in the court of, I forget the Mongol emperor's name, and then he went back and took the knowledge of China to the West, and that was sort of the first meeting of China and the West. So the Mongols, they kept and venerated Chinese medicine, developed it further. During the Ming Dynasty, we have the Li Shizhen, who was a very prolific practitioner. He wrote the the Bensao Ganmu, which is a compendium of Materia Medica, an enormous work that was published after his death, and basically codified all of the herbal knowledge in China up to that date. He also wrote some texts on pulse diagnosis. So then the Qing dynasty, which was going back to the Ming. So you had the Yuan dynasty. The Ming dynasty is a Han dynasty, so it is culturally Chinese. Then the Qing dynasty is another sort of foreign dynasty. It is a Manchurian dynasty, so the people from the north came down and invaded and overtook the Ming dynasty. So this is not sort of culturally Chinese. So during this time period, you have developing Wenbing theory, which is sort of a using herbal medicine to treat what we would call warm diseases, like influenza, measles, whooping cough, these sort of infectious epidemic type diseases. And they do it through this 4-level system here. And that, the Wenbing Lun, which is the text for the warm diseases, that was published in 1746. So China was not the only people developing this Eastern medicine. In Japan, in the 1600s, they would, so people who were born blind, they would be trained as acupuncturists, because the palpatory diagnosis and the people who could feel and develop those senses of palpation were actually very good at acupuncture. So if you were born blind or if you were blinded at a young age, then you would be taught how to do acupuncture. So one of these acupuncturists was Shugiyama Waichi. He is sort of the godfather of Japanese acupuncture. He also invented the guide tube. So, you know, like the little things that we tap onto, that's a contribution of Japanese acupuncture. And then in Japanese, the herbal side of stuff, they had Kampo, which is sort of their the Japanese herbalism. They used a lot from the Chinese Materia Medica, and they added some things to it, like abdominal palpation, using that as a diagnosis to determine which formulas to use. And then in Korea, Sam acupuncture, which is a 4-needle technique, was developed by itinerant monks who would travel throughout Korea. Okay, so we're moving right along. So after the Qing dynasty, the Qing dynasty was pretty corrupt, and it was kind of in decline for a while. During the 1800s, there was a lot of famines. A lot of people left China. A lot of Chinese came to the United States during that time period to help build the railroads. After the fall of the Qing in 1911, you had two competing factions. You had the nationalists, who were more Western-leaning, led by Chiang Kai-shek. They outlawed traditional Chinese medicine in 1929 because they saw the fall of the Qing as holding on to sort of tradition, and they saw that as being as being one of the reasons why they were being invaded from all sides, from Japan, and they lost a lot of national pride during that time. So they outlawed traditional Chinese medicine in 1929. The other competing faction was the communists, Mao Zedong, who you all know. You know who won. The communists won after World War II. And so the People's Republic of China, they continued the persecution of Chinese medicine. And then during the Great Leap Forward, which was actually not really a great leap forward, it was a lot of famine and destruction happened during the Great Leap Forward. So they reversed course and they brought back a lot of the Chinese medicine practitioners. Then, during the Cultural Revolution, they reversed course again because during the Great Leap Forward, Mao was about to lose hold of his power, and so he just started the Cultural Revolution and decided to kill or banish a lot of the educated class, a lot of the elite doctors, and so basically all of the people who came back started teaching Chinese medicine and started working on people again. Then he got rid of them and had created the barefoot doctors, who were sort of people that they'd hastily taught like first aid and a couple of acupuncture points to, and sent those out into the nation to heal the nation. And then finally in the 1970s, they sort of accepted Chinese medicine, and they standardized it to form TCM. TCM is a communist construct. It's sort of a blending of all knowledge of Chinese medicine into codified systems. Traditionally, herbalism and acupuncture weren't used together. During the communists' mashing of Chinese medicine, they blended those together. So TCM also excludes a lot of that history component of it, a lot of the animistic roots, a lot of sort of the philosophical aspects of Chinese medicine. They sort of took that out, and then they named the points gallbladder 20 as opposed to feng shui, the wind gate and stuff. So they they sort of removed a lot of the foundation and a lot of the connection with the landscape and with the human body in that time period. So that brings us to the modern era. We'll just go really quickly through a couple of things. So so that diaspora, that Chinese diaspora that left during the Qing dynasty, some of them came to the United States and worked on the railroads. This is one of the gentlemen, Ying He, known as Doc He. He founded the Kamwa Chung Company in John Day, Oregon in 1888. He was a Chinese doctor, and he successfully treated folks. He kind of became a legendary status in the 1910s during the Great Flu epidemic after World War I. There was a huge epidemic that a large portion of the population died. None of his patients died from the flu. So he became sort of this legendary figure. He has there's a really cool museum in John Day that has, basically what happened is when he put up his practice in like the 40s or the 50s, they just basically boarded it up. And so they have all of the old formulas, all of the old bottles. And it's a really kind of if you're in that area for any reason, it's a cool place to stop into and check out, because it gives a little bit of a twist on the Western idea of sort of that blend of the Eastern and Western there. So that's one of the things. The Chinese medicine still continued to develop. Ear acupuncture was developed by a French neurologist, Paul Noguier, in 1957. So any of the acupuncture on the ear, that is not traditionally Chinese or Japanese. That is a French contribution to the medicine. And that developed into battlefield acupuncture, which the military uses in training for anesthesia and calming the nervous system. So, and then one more little tidbit here. So, in 1970, in the South Bronx at the Lincoln Hospital, the Black Panthers and Young Lords took over the hospital because they were appalled at how they were being treated. There was a heroin epidemic at the time period, and they utilized acupuncture in their detox clinic as an alternative to methadone, because they found that methadone was not actually helping the addicts and the people. It was just sort of prolonging their addiction. So they utilized acupuncture during that time period in the 70s. One of their acupuncturists was Mutulu Shakur. This is Tupac Shakur's stepfather. So he was also in the Black Revolutionist Army. He was arrested in 1981 and spent most of his life in prison. So, and that is all I have. This is a brief bibliography. A lot of the stuff I pulled from are lectures from Liu Ming, and those can be found at a site called the Dayuan Circle. Liu Ming was a Chinese medicine historian. He's originally from like the East Coast, but his lectures are great. Paul Unshold he's written a lot of scholarly books on Chinese medicine. He has translations of the Huangdi Neijing, the Nanjing, many of the old Chinese medicine texts. And then the Hendricks and Barnes, Chinese Medicine Healing, and Healing is a fun sort of episodic history of Chinese medicine. And then you have other histories like John Key's China, which is pretty easy to get through. David Hinton has some really great translations of the Chinese classics, the Analects, the Tao Te Ching, Chuangzi. This is also a really nice, cool book, the Wild Earth, Wild Mind, which sort of gets into the the differences between Eastern mindset and Western mindset. So his books are really, really cool too. This is sort of a, this is if you're into archaeology and stuff like that. So that's all I've got for today. I will open it up to questions. Yes.
Was acupuncture effective in treating heroin addiction?
Yes, I mean, it still is today. I mean, basically what acupuncture is utilized for is to reduce cravings. So oftentimes stress exacerbates those cravings and sort of the sympathetic nervous system. So what auricular acupuncture does is it helps to reduce the cravings and to reduce sort of stress in general. Yeah. All right. Yes.
In your introduction, you mentioned that last session had been May 29th, isn't it?
April 29th. Did I say May? Sorry. Don't you know that the sun rises in the west and sets in the east? Yeah.
This is kind of an off-the-wall question. My husband collects the Nichkas. They were
Nitsukis.
Nitsukis, okay.
Yeah.
When did that era, how do you find out about all the different animals that they put on?
I don't know too much about that. So Nitsukis were, they're these little carved medallions so it's Japanese. They wore kimonos, and so they didn't have pockets. So yeah, so so instead of pockets, they would carry these little boxes, and what they would do is they would loop the Nitsuki through their belt and have it sort of held that box on their belt. So there's these little ornate carvings. I would check out the LA County Art Museum. Has a huge exhibit on Nitsukis. So that would probably be, one of the places that I would look. Yeah.
It's interesting, they put different things together.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a rhyme or a reason.
Yeah, I couldn't answer this like that specifically, but yeah.
Yeah, this is just more of a statement. I think that this presentation really helps me to understand. It explains how the thought process works. When I read that part of that book, The Web That Has No Lever,
Yeah.
I got so lost so fast because it was talking about Chinese medicine and traditional European medicine and how they differ. And when you talk about the Chinese, I was like, it didn't make sense. But this sort of lends an air of like, oh, it's a different thought.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? So next week we'll go over theory. We'll go over yin yang, 5 elements, some of these basic theories that arose from the book, the Tao Te Ching, and the Huangdi Neijing. We'll go over seasons and any other questions? Go.
You have some friends that want to start coming to this series at the second or third.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's some folks who couldn't make it this week that'll be here next week. And this, you don't need this lecture for the other lectures. You'll get a little bit more from it, having attended this lecture. But yeah, you absolutely have them come on in. Let's see. And there was something I was going to say, but I forgot. Yes.
Is there a shop where we can get traditional medicinal powders?
Chinese herbs. I mean, we sell formulas at Good Medicine. They're patent herbs, so they're basically pills. If you're looking for individual herbs, I know Kelly at Meadowsweet. She has some Chinese herbs, and then Butterfly Herbs has some. Like I get my my chrysanthemums from Butterfly Herbs. Usually they have some good chrysanthemums. Those are used for tea and for eye issues. But those two places, and then to get into like managing an herbal medicinary is pretty extensive. I usually, if I'm doing a custom formula, I use a place out of Oregon called Root and Branch. Yes.
And friendly reminder that, Mary, and to everyone else too, be vigilant in understanding that just because an herb says this is good for sleep, go to an actual trained herbalist, because as he mentioned, it has to be your constitution, because lack of sleep has multiple diagnoses. So an herb is not something to, like we shop for online, that we look at, oh, I need something for bone growth, I need something for digestion. Even something as simple as I'm about to get a cold, going to an acupuncturist, a trained Chinese medicine practitioner will see you, the individual, get you on the herbs necessary for you. And Mary, same comment to that, if there is something that's smaller or lighter, like say chrysanthemum tea, it is good for the eyes. It's still nice just to have a practitioner, because that's the part, as he mentioned about the kitchen and the laboratory being divided, is that the more that you're able to learn through your Chinese medicine practitioner, the more you can bring your inner witch back, so that you can brew your teas and actually throw in berries and things of that nature that's through Chinese medicine to teach you. So I will say, don't just generalize because it's Chinese medicine herbs, that must be better than any herbal rather formula, but understanding the constitution behind it through the guide.
And I will say also, like we have this concept that if it's an herb, if it's natural, then it's safe and there's no side effects. That is not true. So you're putting something into your body. Herbs are often more potent in certain compounds, and that's why they're herbs. If that's what your body needs, that's great. But if your body doesn't need that, or if your body is going to react a different way from it, then that's where the knowledge base of having a practitioner comes. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, sorry. One more.
I'm visiting from out of state, so I was wondering if the next two sessions are available virtual.
Yes. Well, the next one, the theory will be. I don't know if the last one will be, because that's going to be at Good Medicine, and we'll try and film that one, and yeah, we'll try and get that one. But definitely this one and the next one will be available on YouTube. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning with me.